I didn't know this would be the case. I was looking directly at William and Harry across her coffin as I delivered it.
Diana's brother just broke his silence. It was not a subtle hint or a carefully worded non-answer in some forgotten interview, but a real and deliberate statement about Meghan and what she has done to this family. It was about what she has cost the one person Charles Spencer swore in front of the entire world he would always protect. Harry heard it, and sources say he is absolutely reeling. 30 years ago, Spencer stood in Westminster Abbey and made a promise. Today, that same man is raising questions that cannot be unasked. So, what exactly did he say? And why now? Stay with us, because this one changes everything. The man behind the eulogy. Who Charles Spencer really is. Most people only know Charles Spencer from one moment. September 6th, 1997. Westminster Abbey. The kind of silence that fills a space so completely you can feel it pressing against your chest. Millions watching. A family sitting rigid in the front pews. And one man walked up to a microphone with something burning behind his eyes. He spoke for 7 minutes. 7 minutes that shook the monarchy to its foundations. He called Diana a girl who became a symbol. He talked about her laughter and warmth, about the way she needed no royal title to generate the kind of magic that made ordinary people feel seen. And then he looked in the direction of the institution that had swallowed his sister whole. At that moment, he said what every grieving person in that abbey was already thinking. The Blood family would make sure her boys were okay. The applause started outside, rolled in through the stone walls like a wave, and the royal family sat there and took it. That moment told you everything you need to know about Charles Spencer, but it told you nothing about the man himself. And that distinction matters enormously right now, because Charles Edward Maurice Spencer is not simply Diana's grieving brother. He is a man with his own complicated, often turbulent story. A man who has been through enough of his own battles. Enough to know exactly what it looks like when an institution or a person starts quietly dismantling someone you love. He was born on the 20th of May, 1964, the youngest child and only son of John Spencer, the 8th Earl Spencer, and his first wife Frances. He grew up at Althorpe, the Spencer family estate in Northamptonshire. 7,000 acres. A house so old and so vast it barely feels like a home, more like a statement. Diana was 3 years older, and from the beginning, the two of them shared something their older sisters, Sarah and Jane, didn't quite understand. They shared a particular kind of sensitivity, a tendency to feel things too deeply for the world they'd been born into. Their parents' marriage was miserable, and it eventually collapsed in a divorce that was ugly and damaging. Their mother, Frances, left the children behind, and that wound never fully closed for either of them. Charles was 7 years old when his parents separated. 7. The same age Archie is now. Think about that for a moment. He was sent to boarding school, Maidwell Hall, then Eton. The classic English aristocratic conveyor belt designed to produce men who keep their emotions neatly folded and stored somewhere out of sight. But Spencer never quite managed that. He felt things and showed it. And in the world he grew up in, that was considered a liability. He inherited the earldom in 1992 when his father died. He was 27 years old and was suddenly responsible for Althorpe. He was made to stand up for the Spencer legacy, for a title that carried enormous weight and even more debt. He opened the estate to the public, built it into a functioning business, turned what could have been a crumbling inheritance into something sustainable. But his personal life told a different story. His first marriage to Victoria Lockwood produced 4 children, and ended in a divorce that was anything but quiet. Victoria gave an interview that aired in 1995, describing the marriage as deeply unhappy. She spoke about his behavior in terms that were sharp and specific. Spencer pushed back. The whole thing played out in the press in a way that was uncomfortable and exposing. He remarried. That ended too. He has been through 3 marriages in total, 3 public failures in a world that photographs everything and forgets nothing. Charles Spencer has spent the last 3 decades doing nothing. He has been watching, quietly, carefully, from the edges of the royal story. He has seen what public life does to people and lived it. He knows what it looks like when someone is being diminished slowly. He is not naive or easily fooled, and he does not speak without purpose. That is what makes his history of public commentary so significant. He has largely stayed out of royal affairs since Diana's death. There have been moments where he has surfaced to say something pointed. He gave interviews around the anniversaries of Diana's death. He has spoken about her funeral, legacy, about the way she has been remembered, and the responsibility he feels to protect that memory. But Meghan, the Sussexes, Harry's life in California, the breakdown of the family, almost complete silence until now. And here is the thing about Charles Spencer's silences. They are never accidental. This is a man who has been burned by the press, by public exposure, and by saying too much at the wrong moment. When he goes quiet on something, it is a decision. When he stays quiet for years, it is a very deliberate decision. So, when that silence finally breaks, it means something. It means he has been watching long enough, thinking long enough, and that whatever he has concluded firmly enough to say it out loud. There is one more thing you need to understand about Charles Spencer before we get to what he actually said. He made a promise at that funeral, in front of millions of people, on the record, forever. He said the Spencer blood that flows through Diana's sons would continue the imaginative and loving way in which she was steering these two exceptional young men. According to him, the family would make sure Harry and William were okay. Harry was 12 years old, sitting in that abbey. At that age, he walked behind his mother's coffin through the streets of London in front of the entire world. And his uncle stood up and told him. He told everyone that the family would take care of him. That promise has never gone away. Not for Spencer and not for Harry, which is exactly why what Spencer has now chosen to say carries the weight that it does. This is not a commentator or a distant royal observer with a book to sell. This is the man who stood in Westminster Abbey and took personal responsibility for Harry's well-being. When that man speaks about the woman in Harry's life, Harry listens, even when what he hears is not what he was hoping for. So, who is Charles Spencer really? He is a man who loved his sister fiercely and watched the world fail her. He is a man who has made his own mistakes loudly and publicly. Yet, he kept going anyway. He is a man who understands legacy and loss. He is also a man who has been paying very close attention. And the question hanging in the air right now, the one we are going to answer, is simple. What did he see? What Spencer said? And what he didn't? There is a particular kind of statement that does more damage in its restraint than it ever could in its anger. No shouting, accusations, or dramatic press conference with a lawyer standing nearby. Just a few carefully chosen words, delivered in the right place at the right time by the right person. And the silence around those words does the rest of the work. That is exactly what Charles Spencer did. And the royal world has not stopped talking about it since. It did not come in the form of a bombshell interview. There was no sit down with a major network. No memoir chapter conveniently leaked to the press the week before publication. Spencer is too measured for that, too aware of how these things play out. He has watched enough people detonate their own credibility by saying too much too fast. What he said came out in a context that felt almost casual, almost offhand. The kind of setting where people tend to drop their guard and say the thing they have actually been thinking for a very long time. He was speaking publicly about Diana's legacy and her memory. It was the kind of conversation Spencer has had before, familiar territory, and then he moved the conversation somewhere it had never gone before. He spoke about Harry, not William, the king, or the institution, Harry specifically. The boy he promised to protect, the man the boy became, and the life that man is now living. He chose his words the way you choose words when you know they are going to be repeated. When you know people are going to study them, pull them apart, look for the edges. He said Harry was a man who had clearly been through an enormous amount of pain. He acknowledged the distance from the royal family and spoke with what sounded like genuine sorrow about the fracture between Harry and the people he grew up with. And then he said something about Meghan. He said he hoped the choices Harry had made had brought him the peace he was clearly searching for. Hoped. Past tense framing on the hope itself. Not that it had brought him peace, that he hoped it had. That single word sitting in that particular sentence structure told you everything about where Charles Spencer actually stands. Some people heard that and thought it was generous. Diplomatic even, the kind of thing you say when you want to be kind without being dishonest. Those people are not listening carefully enough. Because Spencer did not stop there. He went on to say that Diana had always believed the people you chose to surround yourself with either lifted you or diminished you. She had a radar for people who carried hidden agendas. She had been wrong about that radar once or twice in her own life, and it had cost her in ways that never fully healed. He said he thought about that a lot when he looked at Harry's situation. He did not say Meghan's name in that specific context. He did not have to. The architecture of what he said made the meaning absolutely clear to anyone paying attention. Royal commentators did not waste time drawing the connection. Within hours of Spencer's comments circulating, several of the most respected voices in royal coverage were saying out loud what Spencer had implied with such precision, that Diana's own brother was raising the possibility that Harry had made the same mistake Diana made. He had placed his trust, future, and identity in someone whose agenda was not entirely what it appeared to be. One commentator put it plainly. She said Spencer's comments were the most significant thing any member of Diana's family had said about the Sussex situation since it began. Not because of what he confirmed, because of what he refused to deny. That distinction is important. Spencer was asked directly in the same conversation whether he felt Meghan had been unfairly treated by the British press and by the royal family. It is a question that has a very well-worn answer in these circles. Almost everyone who was asked says yes. Spencer paused, a long pause, the kind of pause that a man takes when he is deciding between the honest answer and the careful answer. He said the press treatment of anyone connected to that family was something he had complicated feelings about, given his own experiences. He said he would never wish that kind of scrutiny on another person. He did not say Meghan had been treated unfairly, nor did he say she deserved better. He answered a question about Meghan's treatment without once defending Meghan, and in the context of everything else he said, that absence hit like a closed door. People who know Spencer well were not entirely surprised. Sources familiar with the Spencer family have said quietly for some time now that the relationship between Althorp and the Sussexes has been cordial at best. That the warmth Harry might have hoped for between his mother's family and his wife has never quite materialized in the way he imagined it would. There were early signs. When Harry and Meghan were first building their public narrative around Diana's memory, positioning Meghan in particular as someone who understood and honored Diana's legacy, Spencer was absent from any endorsement of that framing. He did not push back publicly, but he did not validate it either. He let it sit there without his blessing. For a man who has always been fiercely protective of how Diana is represented, that silence was its own kind of statement. And the people closest to the situation understood that. There is one more layer to what Spencer said that has received less attention than it deserves. At the end of the conversation, he was asked what message he would want Harry to hear right now, if he could say anything directly to his nephew. He smiled, and then he said something that was so simple and so loaded, it has been quoted in royal circles ever since. He said he would tell Harry that the door at Althorp was always open, that it had always been open, and it always would be. The door at Althorp was his home, Diana's final resting place. The estate where her grave sits on a small island in the middle of an ornamental lake, surrounded by trees she loved. He was not talking about a physical door. He was talking about a way back, a return to the people who share Harry's blood, to the people who carry the same loss. He was telling Harry publicly that there was somewhere to go, a place that was not California and was not Kensington Palace. He was offering an alternative, and the implication beneath that offer was unmistakable. The door is open, which means right now, Harry is on the outside of it. The question that nobody has answered yet is whether Harry heard that, whether he understood what his uncle was really saying, and whether the woman standing next to him would ever allow him to walk through. The marriage under the microscope, divorce rumors, and the cost of isolation. Nobody announces a divorce before it happens. They don't sit down one morning and decide today is the day they tell the world. It doesn't work like that. What happens instead is quieter, slower. A series of small things that individually mean nothing, but collectively paint a picture that becomes impossible to ignore. There were separate schedules, projects, and interviews. A body language that used to be open and is now just slightly closed. A smile that used to be spontaneous and now looks like it requires a moment of effort. You don't see the end coming, you see the distance. And then one day the distance is the story. People have been watching Harry and Meghan very carefully for the last 2 years, and what they are seeing is distance. Harry and Meghan's relationship moved at a speed that surprised even people close to Harry. They met in the summer of 2016 through a mutual friend. Within 2 years, they were married. Within 4 years, they had left the royal family, relocated to North America, and launched themselves as an independent brand in one of the most dramatic exits the monarchy had ever seen. It was bold and unprecedented, and for a moment, it looked like it might actually work. The Netflix deal came first. A reported $100 million for a content partnership that would give the Sussexes a platform to tell their stories on their own terms. Then, the Spotify deal. Another reported $18 million for a podcast venture. Then, the memoir, Spare. It was released in January 2023 and immediately becoming one of the fastest-selling nonfiction books in publishing history. On paper, the Sussex brand looked like a machine, but paper has a way of hiding cracks. The Netflix deal has produced significantly less content than the platform or the public expected. The docuseries about Harry and Meghan themselves landed and generated enormous attention. But the projects that were supposed to follow, the broader slate of content that would justify a 9-figure partnership, have moved slowly. Some have stalled, some have quietly disappeared from any public discussion. Meghan's lifestyle brand, American Riviera Orchard, launched in early 2024 to considerable fanfare, and then it went almost immediately quiet. The products that were announced with great ceremony have been slow to reach consumers. The influencer send-outs generated buzz, but the business infrastructure behind the brand raised questions among industry observers about how serious the operation actually was. The Spotify deal collapsed entirely. Archewell Audio, the podcast company the Sussexes launched with such ambition, ended its partnership with Spotify in 2023. It stopped after producing a fraction of the content the deal required. A Spotify executive was quoted making comments about the situation that were not flattering. The partnership ended, and the money was gone. The momentum evaporated, and through all of this, the cracks between Harry and Meghan started showing up in places that were harder to explain away. Look at their public appearances over the last 18 months. There have been events where Meghan appeared solo, events where Harry appeared solo, stretches of weeks where the two of them seemed to be operating in entirely separate orbits without any particular explanation offered to the public. When they do appear together, something has shifted in the texture of their interactions, the easiness that characterized their early years together. That unguarded quality that made even skeptical observers agree that they seemed genuinely in love has been replaced by something more composed, more managed, and more like two people who are performing a partnership rather than living one. Body language experts have noted it. Royal commentators have noted it. Even some of the most sympathetic voices in Sussex coverage have begun acknowledging quietly that something in the dynamic between these two people has changed. Body language is not evidence of anything. Separate schedules are not evidence of anything. People in high-pressure public lives lead complicated logistical existences, and it would be unfair to read catastrophe into every solo appearance. But there is something else happening that goes beyond appearances. There are reports, not from anonymous trolls on social media, from credible sources with track records of accuracy on Sussex matters. Reports that Harry and Meghan have been having serious conversations about the direction of their lives that have not been going smoothly. Harry has not hidden the fact that his father's cancer diagnosis affected him deeply. He flew to London to see King Charles when the diagnosis was made public. That visit was brief. The images of Harry arriving and leaving Clarence House told a story of a son who wanted more time than he was given, or perhaps more welcome than he received. But he went. He kept going back. Physically, emotionally, in every interview where the subject of his family comes up, Harry circles back to the possibility of repair. He talks about his father and brother, and even when talking about William is clearly painful. He has never once indicated that the door is fully closed on his side. Meghan has been considerably more guarded on the subject. Her public comments about the royal family have remained sharp. Her willingness to revisit the grievances documented in Spare and in the Netflix docu-series has not diminished noticeably. She has built her brand, public identity, and her entire American narrative around a story of escape, of leaving a damaging environment and building something better. You cannot simultaneously build a brand around leaving and quietly consider going back. Those two things are in direct conflict, and Harry and Meghan are living inside that conflict every single day. Sources close to the situation have used specific language when describing the current state of the Sussex marriage that is worth paying attention to. The word used most often is not angry, it is not broken, it is not over. The word used most often is exhausted. Two people who have been running at full speed since 2020. They have been fighting battles on multiple fronts, simultaneously building a business while processing a family rupture and raising two small children. Archie is 5, Lilibet is 3. They are being raised in Montecito, California. They are largely out of public sight and in a life that looks from the outside like extraordinary privilege, a life that feels from the inside, according to people who have spoken to those close to the family, like an increasingly pressured existence. Harry misses his family, not the institution or the protocol, but his family, his father, his brother, the England he grew up in, the grave on the island at Althorpe where his mother is buried, and which he has not visited as often as he would like because every trip back carries weight and cost and negotiation. That grief does not go away. It accumulates, and it has been building for years inside a marriage that is also bringing its own pressures. This is the landscape into which Charles Spencer dropped his comments, not into a stable, settled household that could absorb outside noise without difficulty, into a marriage that is already going through significant internal strain, into a situation where Harry is already quietly questioning whether the life he built was worth everything it cost. Spencer's words did not create a crisis, but they landed inside one. And the people who know Harry best say that hearing those specific sentiments from that man hit him in a place that very few people can reach. Because Spencer is not the press. He is not a palace courtier with an agenda. He is not a biographer trying to sell books. He is the man who stood at Diana's funeral and said the family would always be there. When that man looks at your marriage and says he hopes it brought you peace, pauses before he says it, and then spends the next several minutes talking about how Diana's greatest vulnerability was her tendency to trust the wrong people. That lands differently, and in the part of Harry that is still 12 years old, still walking behind that coffin, and still listening to his uncle's voice echo off the stone walls of Westminster Abbey. Still hoping that the people who promised to protect him actually can. The divorce rumors that have been circulating with increasing frequency over the last several months are not coming from nowhere. They are coming from a cumulative picture: financial strain, creative tension, diverging ambitions, a husband who wants to go home, and a wife whose entire brand depends on never going back. And now, the one member of Diana's family with any real moral authority over Harry's choices has stepped forward and made clear, in the most measured and devastating way possible, that he is not certain Meghan has been good for his nephew. That changes the calculation. It does not end the marriage or resolve the tension, but it changes something fundamental in the story Harry has been telling himself about who supports him and who sees him clearly. Because Harry always believed that if Diana's family accepted Meghan, it meant something. It meant he had got it right. For him, it meant the woman he chose carried something of what his mother carried. Charles Spencer just raised a question about that belief that Harry cannot simply dismiss. And that question, once asked, does not go quietly back into silence. Harry at the crossroads, what happens next? There is a version of Harry's life where everything still works out, where the phone call with his father becomes a real conversation, a time where he and William find their way back to something that resembles brotherhood, where Meghan and the Spencer family quietly find common ground, where the children grow up knowing both sides of who they are, a version where the exile ends, not with a dramatic announcement, but with a gradual, almost unnoticed return to belonging. Harry is still holding on to that version. The question that nobody around him can answer with any certainty right now is whether that version still exists, whether the decisions that have been made, and the words that have been said publicly and permanently, the bridges that have been not just crossed but documented in a best-selling memoir, have left enough of a foundation to build anything on. Charles Spencer's intervention has brought that question into sharper focus than anything has in a very long time. To understand where Harry stands right now, you have to understand something about how he processes the world. Harry has always been a man who familiarized himself around people rather than institutions. While William was shaped by duty, preparation, and the long, slow understanding that he would one day be king, Harry grew up with more freedom and more damage in roughly equal measure. The freedom to be himself. The damage of losing his mother at 12 years old in a way that was public and violent and never fully grieved because the world would not allow it. He has spent his entire adult life looking for people who feel safe, people who will not leave, people who see him not as a prince, a spare, or a brand, but as a human being who has been through something genuinely devastating and is still trying to find solid ground. He believed Meghan was that person. He may still believe it, but the scaffolding around that belief is showing stress in ways that are becoming harder to ignore. King Charles's cancer diagnosis changed something in Harry that his public appearances have only partially revealed. When the diagnosis was made public in early 2024, Harry moved quickly. He flew to London and saw his father. The visit was short, shorter than Harry wanted by most accounts. The relationship between father and son has been complicated for decades, filled with the particular damage that comes from a man who loved his children, but was not always present in the ways that mattered most when they needed him. But Harry went, and he has kept going back in different forms. He kept on reaching out and leaving a door open on his side, even when the door on the other side has not always swung wide in return. People close to Harry say his father's illness activated something primal in him, a fear he has been carrying since he was 12 years old. The fear of running out of time, of leaving things unresolved with the people he loves, and then having that chance disappear the way it disappeared with his mother, without warning or a goodbye, without any of the conversations that needed to happen and now never could. He does not want to repeat that, or cannot repeat that. And so he keeps reaching across the distance even when the distance does not always reach back. William is a different and in some ways more painful story. The brothers were close once, genuinely, visibly, and movingly close. Two boys who had lost the same person in the same shattering way, and who understood each other's grief from the inside because they had lived it together. That bond was real. The images of them walking behind their mother's coffin as children, side by side, are among the most heartbreaking photographs of the last 30 years. What happened between them is a long and complicated story that Spare told from one side with considerable candor and considerable anger. William has not told his side publicly. He has maintained the silence that his position requires and that his temperament seems to prefer. But the silence between brothers is not the same as peace between brothers. Sources who have had contact with both sides of this divide describe the current state of Harry and William's relationship in terms that are bleak, not hostile in an active, ongoing way. Something quieter and in some ways worse. A warmth that has not been restored. Two men who were once each other's closest witness to the worst thing that ever happened to them, and who now exist in almost entirely separate worlds. Harry feels that, deeply and constantly, and it feeds directly into the tension inside his marriage because Meghan has become the reason for it. Whether that is entirely fair or not, the story that is settled in the public mind and in the private conversations of the royal family is that Meghan is why Harry left. Harry knows that story. He disputes it, but he lives inside it every single day. Now place Charles Spencer's comments into this precise moment. Spencer, the man who carries more moral authority over Harry's choices than almost anyone alive, has stepped forward, and in the most careful and deliberate language imaginable, suggested that he is not convinced Meghan has been what Harry needed, that he looks at his nephew's situation and thinks about Diana's vulnerability to the wrong people. He hopes and only hopes that the choices Harry made brought him peace. For Harry, that is not background noise. That is the voice he has been listening to since he was 12 years old. The voice that belongs to the man who stood up in Westminster Abbey and told the world the Spencer family would take care of Diana's boys, the voice of Althorpe, of his mother's blood, of the part of his identity that has nothing to do with palaces or titles or the institution that broke his parents' marriage and then broke his own family apart. When that voice expresses doubt, Harry cannot file it away under press speculation or palace briefing. He cannot dismiss it the way he has learned to dismiss so much else. He has to sit with it. And sitting with it means sitting with questions that go to the very core of the life he has built. Did he make the right choice? Not leaving the royal family. That part he has been consistent about, and whatever the cost, he does not appear to regret it. But the specific choices that came after, the memoir, the Netflix series, the level of public exposure that his children will one day be old enough to consume and form opinions about. The burning of bridges that may or may not be rebuildable. Did Meghan lead him there, or did he choose it? That question does not have a clean answer. The truth is almost certainly somewhere in the complicated middle ground, where two people who both carry significant damage and ambition made decisions together that neither of them fully understood the consequences of until the consequences were already permanent. But Spencer's comments have made it harder for Harry to avoid the question entirely. The children sit at the center of all of this in ways that rarely get discussed with the seriousness they deserve. Archie and Lilibet are growing up in California with a version of their family story that has been managed and publicly presented in very specific ways. They know their grandfather is the King of England. They know their uncle will one day be king. And they are aware their grandmother was a princess who died before they were born. A woman who is spoken about with a reverence that must feel both enormous and slightly abstract to children their age. What they do not yet fully know is the cost, the full weight of what their parents left behind and what was left behind in return. That understanding will come. It always does. Harry thinks about that. About the day Archie is old enough to read Spare, the day Lilibet is old enough to watch the Netflix series, the day they ask their father questions he will have to answer honestly about choices he made before they were old enough to have any say in any of it. He wants to be able to tell them he tried, that he kept the doors open, and that he never stopped reaching for the family on the other side of the Atlantic, even when the reaching was painful and uncertain and mostly unreturned. Spencer just told him in public that the door at Althorpe is open. That is not nothing. That is the door to his mother, to his history, to the part of himself that existed before any of this. So, where does Harry go from here? The honest answer is that nobody knows, not the sources close to the situation, or the royal commentators who have followed this story through every twist. Not Spencer himself, in all probability. What is clear is that Harry is at a genuine crossroads in a way that is different from the crossroads moments that have come before. This is not about a title, a security arrangement, or a Netflix deal. This is about identity. About whether the story he has been telling about his life is the true one, and whether the people he left everything for are the people he believed them to be. Charles Spencer did not destroy Harry's marriage with a few carefully chosen words. That is not what happened here, and it would be reductive to suggest it. What Spencer did was plant a question in the most fertile and vulnerable soil available. The part of Harry that still belongs to Diana. The part that still hears his uncle's voice in Westminster Abbey. The part that has never stopped wondering whether the people who were supposed to protect him actually did. That question is growing now, and wherever Harry goes next, he is going there carrying it. 30 years ago, a 12-year-old boy walked behind his mother's coffin through the streets of London, and the world watched, wept, and said it would never forget. His uncle stood up that day and made a promise that cut through every layer of royal protocol and institutional silence like a blade. The family will take care of him. Harry is 40 years old now, still searching for the version of that promise that actually holds, still listening for the voice that tells him he is safe. He is still standing in that abbey. Charles Spencer just spoke. What do you think he was really saying? Was this an act of love, a warning, or something else entirely? Tell us in the comments below. And if this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it.